Imagine a massive state-of-the-art power plant, like just burning through thousands of tons of coal.
Right. Massive energy.
Yeah, its turbines are spinning at maximum capacity. It's generating gigawatts of electricity. But instead of powering a city or, a hospital or a manufacturing sector, all of that electricity is just routed to this giant concrete room.
Just a single room.
A single room where it just spins a massive, heavy iron wheel.
Mhm.
And the wheel does absolutely nothing. It just spins purely to prove that the power plant is working.
I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you put it like that. It paints a picture of this giant monument to wasted energy.
Exactly. But that is actually the fundamental mechanism of Bitcoin's classic proof of work, or PoUW, as it operates right now today.
Yeah, it really is.
You have miners burning massive amounts of computational energy and real-world electricity, right? Solving these intentionally useless math puzzles. Now, before we go any further, I want to welcome you, the listener, to this custom-tailored deep dive.
So glad to have you here.
We take your sources and extract the most vital insights so you can stay well-informed without having to slog through dense academic literature. Today, our mission is to explore a fascinating alternative to that spinning iron wheel.
And we really do need to look at alternatives because, well, that spinning wheel secures $1 trillion network. It makes it incredibly expensive for anyone to attack the blockchain.
Right. It's a feature, not a bug, technically.
Exactly. The original design dictates that the waste actually is the security. You have to burn real unrecoverable resources to prove you have a stake in the game. But the sheer scale of that waste has researchers desperately looking for a better way.
Which brings us to the obvious question, right? What if we could attach that spinning iron wheel to a grain mill?
Oh, how's that?
What if that computation could simultaneously secure the blockchain and, I don't know, perform economically valuable tasks like machine learning or AI inference?
A holy grail.
Yeah. This is the dream of proof of useful work, or PoUW. We are unpacking a fascinating June 2026 paper today from Rafael Pass at Pearl Research Labs, and it's titled The Economics of Proof of Useful Work.
It's a critical piece of research, honestly, because the whole concept of useful work in blockchains, it always hits this massive theoretical brick wall.
Oh, yeah?
There's this deep-seated assumption in crypto economics that doing something useful actually compromises the security of the entire system.
Okay, let's unpack this, because there is this classic straw man objection that has basically haunted PoUW for years. The objection goes like this. If the work is useful, and miners can sell the output, say, by selling AI processing power to tech companies, aren't we basically paying attackers to attack the network?
Right, the paid-to-attack theory.
Yeah, like if a bad actor can subsidize their 50% network takeover by selling the AI inference they generate along the way, wouldn't an attack on the blockchain become, well, practically free?
That is the ultimate fear, If the attacker gets a massive rebate for their computational power, the security of the system supposedly just collapses.
It sounds totally logical on the surface.
It does. But what we are going to do today is dismantle that exact straw man argument.
I love it.
Using the cold, hard economic equilibrium models from this paper, we'll see not only why that assumption is fundamentally wrong, but how proof of useful work could actually reshape the entire global supply of computation.
Amazing. So, to understand why that straw man argument falls apart, we first have to look at the nuts and bolts of how computation is spent in this theoretical economy.
Let's get into the mechanics.
Right. So in this model, you essentially have a 10-minute window, block time. If you own a single GPU, you basically have 3 choices for how you spend your time.
Right.
First, you can just do solo mining. You dedicate 100% of the chip to mining the blockchain, securing the network, and looking for that block reward.
We call that activity M. And M produces 1 full unit of security and 0 units of useful AI inference.
Makes sense. Second choice, you can completely ignore the blockchain and just do solo inference. You process AI tasks for paying customers.
We'll call that L. So that's 1 unit of inference, 0 units of security.
Right. And then there is the third option, the duplex work, or D. This is where your GPU tries to do both simultaneously.
Which is where it gets tricky.
Yeah, because crucially, there is a physical cost to multitasking on a computer chip. The paper introduces 2 technological overheads, an inference inefficiency called alpha, and a security inefficiency called gamma.
And those overheads are super important.
So let's visualize this. Think of your GPU as a massive factory floor with 10,000 workers. In solo mining, everyone builds cars. In solo inference, everyone builds smartphones.
Okay.
But in duplex work, you force 5,000 workers to build cars and 5,000 to assemble smartphones in the exact same building.
Sounds chaotic.
Right. The factory floor gets crammed, people bump into each other, resources get bottlenecked. That friction is your inefficiency overhead.
That factory metaphor perfectly illustrates the paper's math, actually. The paper uses a really realistic example where both alpha and gamma represent a 30% penalty, so giving them a value of 1.3.
EK 1.3.
Yeah. So to find out what your GPU actually produces, you divide your baseline output of 1 by that 1.3 penalty.
Doing the math in my head.
The math leaves you with roughly 0.77. So for the cost of running your GPU for 1 block time, your duplex factory delivers roughly 0.77 units of AI inference and 0.77 units of blockchain security.
Which honestly feels like a loss at first glance because you aren't getting a full unit of anything.
Exactly.
But wait, if I add 0.77 and 0.77 together, I get 1.54. So for 1 unit of electricity and compute cost, I'm getting a total combined economic output of 1.54.
Yes. You're getting a 1.54 for one deal. And this brings us to a concept the paper calls the duplex overhead index, or delta.
Delta.
Delta is basically a mathematical test. As long as delta is greater than 0, doing both tasks at once on a single GPU is strictly cheaper than hiring 2 completely separate GPUs to do the tasks independently.
Because even though my single factory is a bit cluttered and inefficient, the total volume of goods rolling out the door is massive compared to the overhead of running 2 entirely separate buildings.
Bingo. And that proves duplex work is economically viable. Rational economic actors who are driven purely by profit margins will always choose to run the duplex operation if the hardware allows it.
Because it just makes more money.
It simply generates more total value per watt of electricity.
Which is the fundamental building block we need here. Because if we establish that miners will absolutely use duplex work due to its combined efficiency, we have to circle back to the listener's biggest fear.
The paid-to-attack vulnerability.
Yes, let's dismantle that straw man.
Okay, let's start by defining the actual cost of a 50% attack in a classical, wasteful Bitcoin setup. In classic proof of work, the cost of a majority attack is completely tied to the block reward budget.
Right.
We use the formula P times R divided by 2. P is the price of the token, and R is the reward per block.
Okay, P times R over 2. Let's make sure we understand the divided by 2 part. Why is the cost exactly half of the network's total reward?
Well, think about the mechanics of taking over a decentralized network. To mount a 50% attack, you have to consistently outpace the honest miners. You need 51% of the total hash rate.
Right, you need the majority.
Exactly. So if the network pays out a total reward budget, let's say $1 million a day, the honest miners who are competing with each other will spend up to $1 million in electricity to win those rewards.
Okay.
To beat them, an attacker must deploy enough physical resources to match and slightly exceed that honest hash rate. Therefore, the attacker must spend the equivalent of half the total network's reward budget to maintain control.
So that $1 million budget is literally what keeps the system safe.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But now, enter the straw man. The attacker says, hey, I'm going to attack this new proof of useful work network. I'll buy enough GPUs to take over 51% of the network, but instead of just burning electricity, I'll run duplex work.
Right, they multitask.
Yeah, so while I'm attacking the chain, I'm generating millions of dollars of AI inference. I sell that inference to tech companies on the open market, and that massive revenue offsets the cost of my attack.
That's the argument.
Doesn't that mean the attacker's net cost plummets well below that PR over 2 threshold?
I mean, it seems super intuitive, right? And is why people have feared this concept for years. But that argument completely ignores the reality of open markets. The paper dismantles this using what they call the competitive equilibrium model.
Okay, explain that.
We have to remember that an attacker does not exist in a vacuum. If an attacker can suddenly earn a windfall of revenue from selling AI inference while mining, well, so can every other honest miner on the planet.
So if mining suddenly becomes incredibly profitable because of this extra AI revenue, the market isn't going to just sit there.
Exactly.
A flood of new honest miners are going to rush in to grab those profits. But wait, if thousands of new GPUs suddenly plug into the network, what does that do to the underlying economics of the system?
It creates a massive two-sided squeeze on profitability. First, let's look at the crypto side. As more honest miners plug in, the blockchain algorithm notices that blocks are being solved too quickly.
Right, the difficulty adjustment.
Exactly. To compensate, the network cranks up the mining difficulty. Suddenly, your individual GPU is winning fewer block rewards, meaning your token revenue gets severely diluted.
Wow. And what happens on the AI side of the equation?
On the AI side, all these new miners are generating massive amounts of AI inference and trying to sell it. The global market is suddenly flooded with a massive new supply of compute power.
The supply and demand.
Basic supply and demand dictates that when supply skyrockets like that, the price plummets.
So the profitability gets squeezed from both ends, the token rewards get harder to win, and the AI inference gets cheaper to sell.
And the squeeze continues until the total profit margin drops all the way back down to the baseline cost of running the hardware. The markets adjust dynamically.
That is wild.
Yeah, the inference price and the token price balance each other out perfectly in equilibrium. The paper mathematically proves that even when the work is incredibly useful, once these equilibrium prices settle, the minimal dollar expenditure required to mount a 50% attack via duplex work is still exactly PR over 2.
No way.
Yes, the cost remains tied directly to the block reward budget, just like classical PoUW. Proof of useful work does not give attackers a discount.
That is a massive paradigm shift. It completely neutralizes the biggest criticism of the space by just following the economic mechanics to their natural conclusion.
It's beautiful economics.
So we've established this beautiful economic equilibrium that keeps the network safe on paper. But what does this economy actually look like when it's running in the real world? The paper categorizes 3 distinct economic worlds that the system can exist in, depending on something called the token inference ratio.
Or the TI ratio, yeah.
Right, and the author calls this variable theta.
Theta is the most crucial metric in this whole ecosystem. It's the ratio between the dollar value of the block rewards minted by the blockchain and the total dollar value of the AI inference transacted per block.
Okay.
Essentially, it measures how dominant the token economy is relative to the size of the real-world computation market it's attached to.
I like to think of theta kind of like a price-earnings ratio, a PE ratio in the stock market. It's a single scalar number that summarizes the economic linkage between the speculative crypto token and the actual tangible utility of the AI inference market.
That's a great way to think about it.
So by combining theta and our duplex efficiency, we get our 3 worlds. World 1 is called Bitconia.
Bitconia is our baseline reality.
Right.
This happens if the duplex technology is terrible, like if that inefficiency penalty is so high that our delta falls below 0.
Right, the factory is just too crowded to function.
Right. Exactly. Because duplexing is technologically inefficient, nobody bothers to use it. Mining and inference remain completely segregated. You have pure wasted computation securing the chain on one side, and AI companies renting separate non-mining GPUs on the other.
It is exactly the world we live in right now with traditional Bitcoin.
Precisely.
But let's say our technology improves. The hardware gets better, our delta goes above 0, meaning duplexing becomes profitable. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this shift.
We enter World 2, which the paper calls Fortessia. In Fortessia, duplex is efficient, but the token's market adoption, or theta, is still relatively low.
The economics of Fortessia dictate a fascinating shift. Solo mining completely disappears. Anyone who was previously just spinning an iron wheel to mine the token switches over to duplex work because ignoring the AI revenue is simply leaving money on the table.
But wait, if I'm reading the model right, the total useful output of the global economy stays the exact same. We aren't actually producing any more AI inference than we were in Bitconia, so why is this a better world?
Because while the AI inference output remains unchanged, the security of the blockchain network strictly increases.
Oh.
Think about it. The energy that was previously just spinning the iron wheel is now actively processing AI. But at the same time, the GPUs that were previously only doing AI are now also hooked up to the blockchain, providing security hashes in the background.
So everyone is pitching in.
Yes. The total volume of compute power actively securing the chain goes up drastically. We achieve fortified security for the exact same economic workload. That's the hallmark of Fortessia.
Fortified security without burning an extra ounce of coal. I love that. But then we cross the final frontier, the economy scales, and we enter World 3, Duplexia. This is what happens when both the duplex technology is highly efficient and the token adoption, our theta, gets very high.
Duplexia is the endgame scenario. In this world, the economics flip completely and solo inference disappears.
Wait, all of it? You're saying no one is just running a standard AI server anymore?
All of it. Every single unit of AI inference modeled in this economy is produced through duplex compute. Yeah, it is no longer economically viable for a data center to run a GPU purely for AI without also earning the blockchain block reward at the same time. The competitors who are doing both will simply underprice them out of business.
That is wild to think about, and it leads to the most complex and transformative part of this entire paper, the Duplexia feedback loop. Because if block rewards become completely integrated into the global AI market, they must start to fundamentally alter how that market behaves.
They alter it at a structural level. In Duplexia, the token rewards from the blockchain actually act as a massive financial subsidy for the useful work.
A subsidy.
Yes, because the miners are making a healthy margin on mining the token, they can afford to sell their AI inference output for dirt cheap. In fact, the price of inference falls strictly below the normal marginal cost of electricity and hardware wear and tear.
So the token is literally paying for a portion of the AI compute.
Exactly.
Okay, let's pause here because this brings up the Jevons effect.
Oh, yeah.
William Stanley Jevons was a 19th century economist, and he noticed something incredibly counterintuitive during the Industrial Revolution. When steam engines became more efficient at burning coal, coal consumption didn't go down.
It skyrocketed.
It skyrocketed. Making a resource more efficient just makes people find entirely new ways to use it. It's like adding lanes to a congested highway. You think you're reducing traffic, but all you do is attract more cars, and soon your new 10-lane mega highway is just as jammed.
Perfect analogy.
So if demand for AI is elastic, meaning cheaper prices make tech companies invent entirely new ways to use it, does this inference subsidy mean the blockchain is single-handedly expanding the size of the global AI market?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
The lower inference prices unlock new use cases for AI that were previously just way too expensive to run. Startups can deploy larger models, researchers can crunch bigger data sets. This expands total global demand.
Okay, I see where this is going.
And here is where the feedback loop kicks in. That higher demand leads to higher total spending on inference. Because the token's value is deeply linked to the size of the inference economy it supports, that higher spending raises the overall value of the block reward.
And a more valuable block reward drives the token price up.
Yes, a higher token price means the miners are making even more money from the blockchain. And what do they do with that extra profit? They use it to subsidize the AI inference even further, dropping the price of compute again.
So it just feeds itself.
It's an aggressive, positive feedback loop. Greater token adoption drives cheaper AI expands the market, and a larger market drives greater token adoption.
But hold on, let's follow the money here.
Yeah.
Because the universe doesn't give away free energy. We aren't generating millions of hours of AI compute out of thin air. Someone, somewhere, is paying the electric bill for this massive expansion.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to talk about what economists call net social value. It is definitely not a free lunch. This entire positive feedback loop is funded by token issuance. It's funded by inflation of the crypto asset, which economists call seigniorage.
So the people holding the crypto token in their digital wallets are quietly paying for this massive subsidy of global AI compute through the dilution of their holdings.
That is the trade-off.
Yeah.
PoUW takes the pure 100% mining waste of Bitcoin and replaces it with two smaller, highly specific costs.
Which are?
First, you have the duplex overhead, that factory floor inefficiency we discussed earlier. It takes slightly more total electricity to do these tasks jointly than to do them purely independently. Second, you have what economists call deadweight loss.
Deadweight loss. Is that because the subsidy makes AI so cheap, consumers start using it for trivial things? Like, if AI compute costs almost nothing, I might use it to generate, I don't know, 1 million pictures of a cat on a skateboard.
Exactly that.
A task that I actually value less than the physical electricity the GPU burned to make it.
That is the perfect definition of deadweight loss. You are consuming resources for a task that yields lower actual value than the real-world cost of the energy used.
Okay, so it's not perfect.
But the paper mathematically proves a vital point. Under elastic demand, the world of Duplexia strictly dominates Bitcoin in terms of net social value.
Really?
Yes. Yes, there are inefficiencies in the factory. Yes, there is deadweight loss from cheap cat pictures. But producing an ocean of highly subsidized, useful AI compute is vastly superior for humanity than burning entire power plants to spin an iron wheel that does absolutely nothing.
Okay, I have to admit, this economic theory is incredibly elegant. But an attacker doesn't buy equilibrium, right? They buy physical computer chips. Which brings us to the actual hardware. The paper addresses a very practical physical reality about network deterrence.
The hardware shift.
Right. Bitcoin runs on ASICs application-specific integrated circuits. These are custom-built chips that do one specific math equation incredibly fast, and they are utterly useless for anything else.
Just paperweights if they are mining.
Exactly. But proof of useful work runs on GPUs, the exact same graphics cards that run PC games, render video, and train ChatGPT.
And moving from ASICs to GPUs creates a very different dynamic when we talk about what actually stops someone from attacking the network in the real world.
Right, and here's my major pushback to the paper's security model. Let's look at a Bitcoin attack. If I attempt a 50% attack on Bitcoin and I cause the network to crash, confidence evaporates and the token value goes to zero.
Right.
My warehouse full of Bitcoin ASICs is instantly bricked. I can't sell them. They are worthless. That total hardware destruction is a massive physical deterrent.
Absolutely.
But if I attack a PoUW network with GPUs and the token crashes, who cares? I still own a warehouse full of state-of-the-art GPUs. I'll just box them up and sell them to OpenAI or Google. Doesn't that retained hardware value make PoUW fundamentally less secure? Like, the attacker has a built-in safety net.
It is a very common argument, and it makes sense intuitively. But the author counters it beautifully by looking at macroeconomic scale. First, on a purely financial level, the value of the token holdings that an attacker would destroy in a crash almost always dwarfs the hardware capital they could salvage.
Fair enough.
But second, and far more importantly, think back to the mechanics of Duplexia.
The world where all inference is heavily subsidized by the token.
Yes, in Duplexia, the blockchain subsidy is single-handedly supporting an artificially expanded massive demand for GPUs. Let's apply some numbers. Imagine the global AI inference market grows to $30 billion annually, specifically because of this cheap, subsidized compute.
Okay.
The world manufactures millions of GPUs to meet that $30 billion demand. If you attack the network and the token crashes, that entire financial subsidy vanishes overnight.
Oh. And without the token paying for part of the compute, AI inference suddenly becomes wildly expensive again.
Exactly.
The companies buying it can no longer afford to run their massive models.
The artificial demand evaporates. Global GPU demand plummets back down to its pre-subsidy baseline. Now, the global market is instantly flooded with millions of surplus GPUs that nobody wants to rent.
Wow, okay.
The resulting crash in global GPU capital value would be catastrophic. The paper argues this GPU market collapse could actually exceed the total value of the entire Bitcoin ASIC market.
That's insane.
You aren't just crashing a crypto token. You are collapsing the artificial floor under the entire global AI hardware market. Your salvaged GPUs would be worth pennies on the dollar.
Wow. So the deterrent is absolutely still there. It just shifts from being hardware-specific to being macroeconomic. You can't escape the blast radius of your own attack.
Precisely. And the paper adds one more crucial physical constraint, which is observability. Think about how you prepare for an attack. If you want to tap Bitcoin, you can quietly manufacture millions of ASICs, hide them in a warehouse in the desert, and plug them in all at once for a surprise 51% takeover.
Right, because no one sees it coming. Idle ASICs don't participate in the regular commercial economy.
But GPUs do. They are general-purpose machines. In Duplexia, GPUs are actively processing valuable economic activity for major tech companies.
Oh, I see where this is going.
If a bad actor wanted to hoard enough GPUs to pull off a 50% attack, they would have a massive logistical problem. They would have to either buy up half the global supply chain straight from the factories or systematically pull millions of GPUs out of active data centers and commercial AI tasks.
Which would be impossible to hide.
The disruption to the commercial AI market would be massive. Wait times for inference would spike. Prices would surge wildly. It would be incredibly obvious to the entire tech sector that an attack was being prepared. You simply cannot hide the acquisition of that much general-purpose compute.
It's like trying to secretly buy half the commercial airplanes in the world to start your own secret airline. People are going to notice when all their flights get canceled.
That's a perfect way to put it. The transparency of the general compute market acts as an early warning system for the blockchain.
So what does this all mean for you? We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We explored how proof of useful work avoids the trap of the zero-cost attack, seeing exactly how the dual squeeze of rising difficulty and falling inference prices ensures the economic cost of an attack remains firmly tied to the block reward.
It's an elegant solution.
We mapped out the journey from the wasteful, isolated world of Bitconia through the fortified security of Fortessia all the way to the subsidized, highly integrated positive feedback loop of Duplexia.
The three worlds.
And we saw how utilizing GPUs entirely changes the physical threat landscape, relying on macroeconomic deterrence and market observability rather than just bricking specialized chips.
The overarching takeaway really is that a PoUW is not just a green or eco-friendly coat of paint for Bitcoin. That limits its true scope. It is a completely new economic engine.
If you are watching the intersection of the crypto and AI spaces, this paper is basically the blueprint for how decentralized financial consensus could literally subsidize and dramatically expand the future of global AI computation. Which leaves me with a final, honestly slightly terrifying thought to mull over. We have established that in Duplexia, the blockchain acts as a massive financial subsidy for AI, funded by the token. But what happens when the AI models running on this decentralized, subsidized network become advanced enough to truly understand the economics of the system they live in?
Oh, wow.
What happens when those models start optimizing the very blockchain protocol they run on to secure better algorithmic rates for their own compute? Could the human quest for decentralized financial consensus ultimately fund the exact computational power required to create an autonomous, self-improving intelligence that controls its own economy?
That is quite the thought.
It makes you wonder if we hook that giant spinning iron wheel up to a grain mill who's eventually going to be the one deciding what we bake.